If you've landed on this video or podcast, chances are you've been searching up no contact. And if that's the case, let me guess, your relationship or situationship ended suddenly, maybe with little to no closure. Your ex, whatever they were, situationship, relationship, is probably sitting somewhere along the avoidant attachment spectrum. And now you're feeling anxious, confused, dysregulated, and wondering, will going no contact make them come back? But what if I told you that doing no contact the wrong way is actually setting you up to relive this pain over and over again? And that is what many of the shit dating coaches that you'll find across the interwebs, very much on YouTube, are giving you the wrong advice, and they're setting you up for a world of hurt. And I know that's a big call, but I promise you, by the end of this episode, you'll feel clearer and maybe even a little empowered to do no contact the right way. That's the way that's in your best interest, not your ex's. Because this isn't about getting them back, it's about getting you back. So hear me out. If you're feeling dysregulated, spinning, hurt, unable to focus, I get it. That was me in 2024. I came out of a highly toxic, emotionally abusive relationship. And no, that's not me being dramatic. It's literally written in the case notes of the psychologist and counsellor I was seeing at the time of the breakup. So I just want to reassure you that I'm not armchair psychologizing you. I'm sharing what I've learned from some incredibly painful breakups, countless hours of therapy, and my current studies in mental health. That is, I am actually undertaking accredited studies to become a mental health practitioner, in addition to the allied health space that I currently work in, and have been doing so for almost 20 years. Now, on that note, this is just a very quick reminder that nothing in this episode or across any of my platforms is therapy or a substitute for professional help. It's here to help you feel seen, heard, and validated, because if you've ever been on the receiving end of some of the absolute bullshit avoidant exes pull, then you know how invalidating that silence and confusion can be. Because off the back of their behaviour, you typically do not feel seen, you do not feel heard, and you feel incredibly invalidated. So in this episode, I'll be breaking down why most no contact advice keeps you emotionally stuck, how trauma and attachment wounds actually impact our ability to hold boundaries, what real healing focused on no contact looks like, and how to spot the difference between reconnection and a repeat trauma loop. And on that note, I want to share some questions to ask yourself if your ex does come back, and how to start rebuilding your sense of self one boundary at a time. So if you find this or any of my other episodes or content helpful, please subscribe, share, leave a comment or a review, because it helps more people find this content and validates that you're not alone in this process. So let's be real. Most no contact advice online is just manipulation in disguise. Go silent, disappear for 30 days, and they'll come back, right? But what happens when you've been silent for 30 days and you're still spinning? What happens when they do come back, but it's with a breadcrumb and no real accountability? People who often give this no contact advice often don't account for trauma, they don't account for attachment wounds, and they don't account for nervous system dysregulation. Because here's the thing, if your ex was avoidant, they likely exited without resolution. No conversation, no accountability, maybe even deflection or blame. And then you were left with the emotional weight of the whole relationship, which, to be honest, you were probably carrying more than what you thought throughout its entirety. And when they ended things, you were still likely holding on to hope, or you still may be already at this point in time, and you might be rehearsing the last thing that you said, the last thing that they said, your last conversation. You still might be watching their social media, looking for any signs that they're about to turn that corner and come back your way. Now, this loop is especially brutal for people with a history of trauma. Childhood maltreatment, emotional abuse, or even adult relationships where your boundaries were consistently violated. And this isn't me just saying this out of nowhere. There is a ton of research to back this up. Decades of trauma literature shows that people with those histories often struggle to recognize, communicate, and uphold their own boundaries. And why is that? Because you were taught that connection comes at a cost, that you have to tolerate discomfort, silence, or even mistreatment to stay connected. So in adulthood, when someone with avoidant traits pulls away, ghosts you, or shuts down emotionally, your brain doesn't register this as a red flag, it registers it as the connection loop, or love, that you experienced when you were emotionally developing. And I can't remember the name of the study off the top of my head, but there was one from a few years ago that I think it landed at that those with a history of childhood trauma, I think it was sitting at about 6 times more likely to fall into these dysfunctional relationships in adulthood. So I don't know about you, but shit, I can attest to that. It's a very real thing. Now, if you're not in contact with your ex, but you're still checking their socials, you're still obsessing over who they're with and what they're doing and replaying every message in your head, you are potentially healing, but you are still waiting. And when you're waiting, you're still emotionally entangled with someone who isn't choosing you. Now, if you're working on this, you can still do this and be healing at the same time. It's not to say that you're not healing if you are doing any of this. It just delays, slows down, or kind of impedes the process a little bit. But it's like anything. You keep working on it, you do get better, and progress, to be honest, even if you do have a setback, progress is never lost. But I really do want to congratulate you if you are not reaching out to your ex, because silence can be incredibly healing. But it's more powerful when it's intentional. Now, if you're using no contact, say for like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is, if you're using no contact as a countdown, that's more performative and you're essentially setting yourself to live in this cage, and it's not necessarily a container for growth because you're still focused on what's going to happen at the end of that time. So it's not allowing your brain to try and feel or achieve peace. You're only giving it pause, and every day becomes about what they might do, not what you need. Okay, but let's just say you've been doing no contact with a timer, or you've been doing no contact and they circle back around. So your plan has worked, but they haven't done the work. What do they often say? Hey stranger, I've been thinking about you a lot. I miss you. I don't know why we stopped talking, or some other bullshit breadcrumb. And you start to question everything. But listen carefully. None of those statements are accountability. They're emotional bids without responsibility, also known as a breadcrumb. So what's likely motivating them to breadcrumb? It's more than likely a drop in attention, fear of losing control, nostalgia, and loneliness. They're responding to a shift in power, a shift in the dynamic, not a shift to their inner world of chaos. So in contrast to these bullshitty breadcrumbs, what would real change sound like? It does sound different. It sounds like I've spent the last few months reflecting on how I showed up. I wasn't ready to face myself and I projected that onto you. If you're open to talking, I'd like to take accountability for the hurt that I caused. And that's not fantasy, that's more reparative language. So let's break it down. So they've reflected on how they showed up. So they acknowledge and understand what they were actually doing. And they also recognize that they were projecting their inner world out onto you. And if they take accountability is I understand how my actions impacted you emotionally, what I did to hurt you, not just I'm sorry that I made you sad. So when we're doing no contact the right way, when we're doing it right, it's not about punishing them. It's not about setting this arbitrary countdown timer for when they're eventually going to realize what they lost and swing back around. It's about protecting you. It's your nervous system saying, enough. I want to prioritize myself and my emotional well-being, and you are not part of that equation. When we're doing real no contact, what it can reduce our nervous system reactivity. It gives our brain a break from the obsessive loops, which, let's be real, very hard to break, especially if you've got ADHD. And it also creates space for your identity to re-emerge, because let's be real, if you were in a relationship with someone who was more avoidantly attached, chances are that you were self-abandoning more than you realized, and you actually lost a lot of the great qualities that they even probably found very attractive to you in the first place. You probably lost or dampened down those qualities as you got further and further into this dynamic. And one of the biggest things that we need to try and shift, and I, again, understand that it can be incredibly hard, is we need to stop measuring our worth through their silence. So that is, if they're not contacting you, it doesn't mean that you're not worthy. It actually often means that they're not worthy of your love, because they do not have the emotional capacity to be the healthy, emotionally regulated partner that you need. And that's not to say all the blame's on them. Everyone has work that they can do. None of us are perfect. But more often than not, if you're on the receiving end of this shitty behavior, they probably have a little bit more work to do, or the work that you both need to do is going to be quite different. Now, these are some tips that I've been advised on. I have tried some, and I can say that for me, it has helped years gone by with different exes that I've been working on or getting through breakups with. But I know not all of this will work for everyone. Everyone's got a different parameter or capacity for self-control, emotional regulation, and everyone will be sitting somewhere differently on the healing spectrum. But some things that you can try and do to help dampen down some of these self-inflicted trauma loops that we may be perpetuating. So muting or blocking their social media for your peace, not to prove a point. Now, I know that there are a lot of dating coaches on the internet that are like, no, keep them connected on your social media, let them look, because if they see that you're thriving and all this bullshit, that will make them want to come back. Fuck that. If it is not good for your mental health to still be connected to them on social media, get rid of them. Some people, they need to just wipe that slate clean. Not everyone can do that, but if you can, 100% okay. There is no right or wrong way to go about it. It's for your peace, not to prove a point. It does not matter what anyone else thinks. If you are just doing something with the intention of putting yourself first and what is emotionally best for you, that is the right thing to do. Do not give a shit about what the other person on the receiving end of it, in this case, your ex, their social media. It doesn't matter what they think if you delete them, mute them, block them, or whatever. It's about you. Now, this next one is a little bit different, but it's actually giving yourself a window to let yourself think about them and then gently redirect. So some people find they get stuck on these thought loops and the intrusive thoughts are creeping in all day, every day, and it actually becomes quite interfering with their daily life. But if you give yourself a 5 or 10 minute window every day or every second day to just let yourself think about them, whatever it is, it's just, you have that time, you can journal, whatever it is, you just sit down, you think about them, uninterrupted, unfiltered, and then gently redirect yourself back. So set an alarm. That way you're kind of getting it out of your system, but you're not letting it bleed into the rest of the day. You give yourself your 5 or 10 minute block, and then you work on trying to get back to whatever it is you're doing throughout the day. And speaking about whatever else we're doing throughout the day, moving your body, even if it's just a walk, physical exercise is one of the best things for emotional regulation, especially if you're going outside for a walk and then you're actually moving your eyes from side to side. That's actually a mental health processing thing it's an activity that helps with our mental health and our mental processing, especially of emotions and emotional regulation. Now, the next one, it is cliche, but it is 100% evidence-based. It works for so many people. Journaling. Journal your triggers. Journal your urges to reach out. I know there's a counsellor online, Ken Reed, he talks about rage journaling, where you just spit and vomit onto your page or paper or whatever you're typing or writing on, and you just go full tilt. Don't show anyone, but you just get it out of your system. And it's because whatever's coming out when you're doing your journaling is what you're really needing in those moments. Be it saying things that hurt you, reflecting on the good qualities about them, the bad qualities about them, whatever it is, just getting it out of your system. And lastly, I want to circle back around to boundaries, because this is what doing no contact the right way leads to. It's boundary repair, or even building your initial boundaries if you weren't really strong with them in the first place. Now, if you're new to boundaries, which a few years ago, I was still really trying to get a handle on them because I just grew up boundaryless because of reasons. So some signs that a boundary has been crossed, even if you didn't say one out loud, it's often you might be feeling resentment towards this person and you're not sure why. And sometimes you can leave conversations feeling small, confused, or emotionally wiped out. And you might be replaying things later in your mind and think, I should have said something. These are very subtle, but they're internal signals that let you know that a boundary of yours has been crossed, even if you actually weren't that aware of what the boundary was in the first place. And learning to listen to them is part of healing, and it's also part of identifying what they are. Now, if boundaries are new to you, you don't have to go full tilt and go hard and try and enforce the huge boundaries that are the real make or breaks for you. You can practice with baby boundaries. So you can begin with tiny no's, which can be something as simple as like deciding to say no to a social event that you're really not that interested in. Because again, those of us that are people pleasers, we tend to say yes and overcommit more than what we should. So even just saying no, initially you'll find that in the lead up to saying no, you'll probably feel a lot more anxious. But then if you say no and you stick with that no, one, you actually feel relieved, you feel better about it. And then more often than not, the person on the other end of that conversation, so on the receiving end of your no or you declining to go out to dinner or go out for a drink, oftentimes it's a non-event. They're like, oh, okay. And then life goes on. We paint it out to be this bigger thing in our head because of how we've been conditioned as we've been growing up. And then another thing that you can do to start practicing boundaries is internally practice naming your needs in low stakes situations. So again, if someone asks you to go out and inside you're just thinking, well, I really don't want to do that because right now I need to go home and rest. I need to go home and spend time with my pet. I need to go home and do meal prep because that is going to set me up for the rest of the week where I won't be stressed, I won't be tired. So it's internally naming what you need in these low stakes situations. And then you can use phrases that are quite powerful, but they're not dismissive. You can just say, I'm not available to do that right now. And most importantly, we need to honor our own limits, even when it's uncomfortable. And that's what all of this practice tries to build, that skill within us. Great. So now you've practiced some baby boundaries. Now, if they come back, what are you going to do? Before you respond to whatever you hear from them, breadcrumb, meaningful reach out, or whatever it is, or if you run into them in person, before you respond, ask yourself, do I feel emotionally safe with them right now? Have they demonstrated any actual growth? That is accountability, acknowledgement, and hopefully an apology. So have they demonstrated any of this, or are they just reperforming affection? Oftentimes the love bombing that you probably fell for in the first place, which guilty. Are they just reperforming affection to get their needs met? Chances are, if it's been less than maybe a year or two since your breakup and they haven't shown up with a real deep acknowledgement of what they've done and what they've done to overcome those shitty behaviors, chances are they are reperforming affection to get their needs met. So another question that you need to ask yourself, are you drawn to them or the fantasy of closure? Or, again, are you falling into this potential re-love bombing that might be at play? So what's very important that we need to be doing, and I've been guilty of not doing this, but hard lessons learned, look at their patterns, not their promises. Are they consistent? Do their actions align with their words? Have they asked you what you need, or are they just telling you what they feel? Which, God, this is just painting my ex to a T. So yes, I'm projecting a fair bit into this episode, but I'm sure many of you listening have lived this experience as well. So if you ask yourself these questions before you're responding, you're giving yourself pause and you're essentially getting to ask yourself, is this peace or is this a pattern I finally have the power to say no to? So it's very important for you to remember and recognize no contact is not a punishment. It's a pause, it's a boundary, and most importantly, it's a reconnection to your peace, to your worth, and to your truth. So if this episode helped you, please subscribe, leave a review, leave a comment, or share it with someone who's stuck in the loop. You're not just learning how to let go, you're learning how to come home to yourself.